It happened on one of those sweltering afternoons when the air felt heavy enough to crush your lungs. Folks were milling around outside a little discount grocery on the edge of the city, fanning themselves, arguing over prices, when a jet-black luxury sedan rolled up to the curb, the kind of car nobody in that neighborhood even dared to touch. Every conversation died mid-sentence. Out stepped this woman, tall, sharp, dressed head to toe in cream heels, clicking like she owned every square inch of pavement she touched. People knew her face from TV, from magazine covers. Tessa Caldwell, software mogul, self-made billionaire single mum. She could have been anywhere else, boardroom, yacht, private gala, but she was here. And instead of striding into the store for wine or rare spices, she walked straight toward the man slouched on the sidewalk. He looked like the streets had been chewing him up for years, coat hanging off his shoulders, hair, matted beard, thick and wild. A frayed bag sat by his feet like it carried every scrap of his life. His name was Daniel Cross, though nobody there knew it. He glanced up at her, confused, almost suspicious. "I've seen you here before," she said, her voice softer than her presence suggested. "You talk about business data strategy, like you've lived it." He gave a short, dry laugh. "That was a lifetime ago. I think you just need a second chance," she said, drawing in a deep breath. "So, I'm going to ask you something crazy. Will you marry me?" The air seemed to freeze. People craned their necks, muttered under their breath. And Daniel, this man who'd been invisible for years, smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "If you mean it," he said slowly, "go in there, buy a ring, come back out, and ask me like you actually mean it." You could feel the crowd's shock. Who tells a billionaire to prove herself? But she didn't blink. Walked right in, and 5 minutes later she was back holding a diamond the size of a marble. And right there on the sidewalk, Tessa Caldwell, Queen of Tech, dropped to one knee. "Daniel Cross," she said, her voice trembling, "will you marry me?" He stared at her for a long moment and finally whispered, "Yes." She slid the ring on his finger and told him to get in the car. He hesitated, mumbling something about the dirt on his clothes, but she just opened the door wider. The ride into downtown felt like slipping into another universe. Daniel sat rigid, clutching his bag. That morning he'd been a ghost. Now he was engaged to the most admired woman in the city. She pulled into a high-end men's grooming club and told the staff, "He's with me." That was all it took. An hour later, the man in the mirror barely resembled the one who'd walked in. The beard was gone. His hair neat, his jawline sharp again. They dressed him in a crisp white shirt, black slacks, shoes that gleamed. He stepped out and she smiled. "That's the man I saw." From there, she drove him to a mansion he thought belonged to a foreign dignitary. "Our home now," she corrected. Inside, he met her little girl Lily, 6 years old, curls bouncing, big eyes scanning him up and down. "Are you a good person?" she asked. He said, "I'm trying to be." And she nodded just like that. That night, over a meal he hadn't tasted in years, real food, rich and warm, Tessa asked him to tell her who he really was. And so he did. Once Daniel had been one of the top data scientists in the country. Big contracts, international conferences, a wife he adored, 2 kids, his parents, under his roof. Until the December morning they boarded a flight without him. The plane never landed. No survivors. "I didn't want money, didn't want friends, didn't want to breathe," he said. "I walked out of my life and never went back." Her eyes glistened. She'd lost her parents in a crash too, then her husband vanished when Lily was just a toddler. "I had to live for her," she said quietly. The next morning she told him, "You start work today at her company." He laughed, said he was rusty, but she just smirked. "Then polish up fast." She walked him into the glass tower of Caldwell Tech and handed him an office with a nameplate, Head of Data Intelligence. The first week was brutal. Software had changed, systems were faster, but instinct doesn't rot. Within days, he was spotting inefficiencies, finding trends no one else saw, saving the company millions. She'd watch him from her doorway, pride in her eyes. Months passed. He was thriving again, giving talks, mentoring young analysts. She was laughing more, working less, spending evenings on the balcony with him and Lily. One rainy night, he cleared his throat. "I thought you were insane that day," he said, grinning. But there was something in your eyes. Maybe hope. I needed it. I didn't believe you'd kneel, but you did. A few weeks later, during dinner on the rooftop terrace, Daniel dropped to one knee himself. "You gave me my life back," he said. "Now I want to do it right." "Tessa Caldwell, will you marry me?" She said yes before he could finish the sentence. The wedding was a city-wide spectacle, but behind the champagne and flashbulbs was something quieter. Two people who'd clawed their way out of the dark and found each other in the light. Years rolled on. They had a son, Aaron. Lily grew up to become a doctor, married a young biomedical engineer, and had a daughter, Grace. And then Tessa said she wanted more. Not for herself, for people like Daniel once was. She launched the Cross Foundation dorms, classrooms, labs, counselling centres. Former beggars became software developers. Widows taught design. Kids who once sold bottled water pitched inventions to investors. The slogan carved into every wall read, "Your story isn't over yet." Shayasma, at the opening, Daniel told the crowd, "When I lost my family, I lost myself. Tessa gave me a reason to live again." That's what this place is about, giving someone a reason. Years later, grey streaks in their hair, they sat on a garden bench watching their grandchildren chase butterflies. He asked her if she ever regretted it, stopping that day in front of the grocery store. "I saw a broken king," she said, "and I knew God wasn't finished with him." He chuckled. "And I thought you were crazy." She grinned. "Still am." But it worked. Their granddaughter ran over holding a drawing, a woman kneeling before a man. Above it, in big looping letters, she'd written, "Love begins where pride ends." Daniel stared at it, then looked at Tessa. She gets it. Tessa kissed the little girl's forehead. She comes from it. Now tell me, if you saw someone at their lowest, someone the world had written off, would you stop? Or would you keep walking? And if they became everything you imagined they could be, would you still believe it was just luck? Drop your thoughts below, because maybe the next second chance story the world talks about could start with you.